China recently accomplished a historic feat by landing on the far side of the moon, igniting discussions about a potential China-America rivalry in lunar exploration. The far side of the moon, often called the dark side, has long been a mysterious and uncharted territory. However, it is now the frontier of humanity's most daring and shocking discoveries. China's lunar lander, Chang'e 6, has made groundbreaking observations that have sent shockwaves through the scientific community and beyond. What initially seemed like simple technological difficulties soon evolved into an encounter with the unexplainable. As the lander's instruments probed deeper into the lunar surface, they transmitted images and data that left engineers and scientists from China's space agency both baffled and alarmed. This accidental discovery raises profound questions. Could humanity be on the brink of its first contact with an alien species? And if so, we ready for the implications? The implications of this discovery are staggering. Join us as we delve into China's new lunar lander's accidental findings on the dark side of the moon. Chang'e 6, part of China's lunar sample collection mission, has achieved a historic first by safely touching down on the moon's far side. Viewed from Earth, the footage reveals a lunar region never before seen by humans. This is due to the moon being tidally locked, meaning one side constantly faces Earth while the other side always faces space. The near side of the moon is far easier to reach and examine, making missions to the far side rare. Until now, only China has managed a soft landing on the moon's far side, although NASA's Ranger 4 made history in 1962 by crash landing there, unable to transmit any data back to Earth. This is the China National Space Administration's, CNSA, second successful landing on the moon's far side. In January 2019, the Chang'e 4 mission deposited a lander-rover combo on the hidden lunar hemisphere. Humanity's first glimpse of this elusive side of the moon came in 1959, thanks to a grainy view from the former Soviet Union's Lunar 3 spacecraft. Then, in 1968, astronaut William Anders sent back breathtaking imagery of the lunar far side during the Apollo 8 mission, which orbited the moon without the use of any optical gear. The Apollo 8 crew members became the first humans to lay eyes on this area of the moon. The landing zone of Chang'e 6, named after a moon goddess in Chinese mythology, is in the South Pole Aitken Basin, a vast impact crater 1,600 kilometers wide and 4 to 5 miles deep. Launched on May 3 and placed into lunar orbit 4 days later, Chang'e 6 will now spend several days collecting lunar soil, or regolith, and rocks from the area surrounding the landing site using its onboard drill. If all goes as planned, Chang'e 6 will have more than just its landing to boast about. The underbelly of the moon appears to hold some enticing secrets. There are suggestions of a hidden lunar base, possibly even a castle, with some astronauts suggesting encounters with aliens on the lunar surface. According to NASA astronaut Neil Armstrong, aliens have a base on the moon and told us in no uncertain terms to get off and stay off the moon. This may sound far-fetched, but an intelligence officer for the United States Navy, Milton Cooper, has confirmed the existence of an alien moon base, codenamed Lunar by the naval intelligence community. This base is reportedly home to a massive mining operation and alien motherships, with smaller flying saucers making journeys to Earth. Rumor has it that soon after the Apollo 11 moon landing on July 21, 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin witnessed extraterrestrial craft. It is said that one of the astronauts referred to a light seen on a crater during a television transmission, followed by a request from Mission Control for further information. Nothing more was heard. An anonymous radio operator, using their own VHF receivers to avoid NASA's broadcasting channels, allegedly overheard a conversation that included the astronauts describing massive spacecraft lined up on the far side of a crater, watching them. In 1979, Maurice Chatelain, former chief of NASA Communications Systems, confirmed that Armstrong had indeed reported seeing 2 UFOs on the rim of a crater. The encounter was common knowledge within NASA, but nobody talked about it until much later. Soviet scientists were allegedly the first to confirm the incident. According to Dr. Vladimir Ashasha, a physicist and professor of mathematics, Neil Armstrong relayed the message to Mission Control that 2 large mysterious objects were watching them after landing near the Moon module. However, his message was never heard by the public because NASA censored it. Soviet scientist Dr. Alexander Kazantsev claimed that Buzz Aldrin began recording the UFOs in color while inside the module and continued doing so after Armstrong and Aldrin emerged into the open air. The UFOs disappeared just minutes after the astronauts touched down on the moon. Maurice Chatelain verified multiple instances of interference with Apollo 11's radio communications meant to conceal the news from the general population. Publications addressing the age-old topic of whether we are alone in the universe continue to emerge. Intelligent beings may have been found on the moon, not far from Earth. The discovery was so astounding that it could potentially threaten long-established social norms, prompting its immediate classification as secret. According to the Russian tabloid Vekanaya Moskva, at a briefing held at the Washington National Press Club on March 21, 1996, NASA scientists and engineers involved in the study of the Moon and Mars presented their findings. They mentioned the possibility of man-made objects on the Moon, with official results to be released later. The briefing also revealed that the Soviet Union had photographic evidence of possible Moon activity, though the exact nature remained unknown. The millions of photos and videos taken by the Apollo and Clementine spacecraft showed numerous locations on the Moon's surface where signs of missions were evident. All across the world, people have created myths and legends that support these ideas. The discovery of enormous glass domes on immense basements, a network of tunnels, and the ruins of lunar cities has caused scientists to re-evaluate their stances on the Moon's issues. Scientists are still confused about the Moon's appearance and the principles of its orbit around Earth. Several partially damaged objects on the lunar surface cannot be classified as part of the lunar geological formations due to their intricate geometry and complicated organization. A building encircled by a large D-shaped wall was found in the upper portion of Rima Hadley, not far from the Apollo 15 landing site. Artifacts have been found in 44 different areas, and experts from the Space Data Bank and the Planetary Institute are exploring these mysterious areas. Near the Tycho crater, terrace-shaped excavations of the rock have been discovered. These concentric, hexahedral excavations and tunnel entries cannot be the result of natural geological processes, instead, they resemble open-cast mines. Near the Cernus crater, scientists found a see-through dome that jutted out from the rim, glowing white and blue inside. In the upper section of the factory area, a strange object even more unusual than the Moon itself was discovered. A disk, about 164 feet in diameter, stands on a square basement surrounded by rhomboid walls. In the picture, close to the rhomboid walls, a dark round embankment in the ground resembles an entry into an underground Caponia. There is a regular rectangular area between factory and the crater Cernus, measuring 984 feet wide and 1,312 feet long. Apollo 10 astronauts made a unique picture of a 1-mile-long object called Castle, which hangs at a height of about 9 miles and casts a distinct shadow on the lunar surface. The object seems to consist of several cylindrical units and a large conjunctive unit. The internal porous structure of the castle is clearly visible in one of the pictures, making the impression that some parts of the object are transparent. Surprisingly, none of the original castle photographs were located after Richard Hoagland's second request for them at a briefing attended by numerous NASA experts. They disappeared even from the list of pictures taken by the Apollo 10 crew. Only intermediate pictures of the object were found in the archives, which unfortunately do not depict the internal structure of the object. The successful departure of China's Chang'e 6 probe from the Moon brings the country one step closer to returning samples from the permanently dark side of the Moon. According to CNSA, the sixth iteration of the Chang'e lunar sample retrieval mission encountered an extra technological hurdle: it could not establish direct contact with ground stations on Earth. This was in contrast to the previous Chang'e 5 mission, which collected samples from the Moon's near side. The probe instead used the communications relay satellite Quqiao-2, launched into orbit in April, to stay in touch. Xinhua, the official news agency of China, reported that the probe dug up dirt both above and below the Moon's surface using a robotic arm and drill on the lunar far side. Following sample acquisition, Chang'e 6 proudly flew China's national flag for the first time. The samples will be transferred to a return module, which will fly back to Earth, with a landing in China's Inner Mongolia region expected around June 25. Scientists around the world are keenly watching the return of the lunar samples to Earth, hoping the soil collected by Chang'e 6 can help answer questions about the origins of the solar system. On a national level, the initiative has garnered significant attention and support. Thousands of people gathered at several viewing locations on Hainan Island in southern China last month to witness the Chang'e 6 launch. Since the only other moon rocks available for study on Earth were collected over 50 years ago by American astronauts during the Apollo era, this is the first attempt by any space agency to return samples using a remote-controlled spacecraft. In the current space race to establish permanent manned lunar colonies, China's dominance is on full display with the historic Chang'e 6 mission. No other country has ever landed a spacecraft on the moon's far side, but now China has done it twice. American officials are concerned about China's broader geopolitical ambitions in light of its recent space exploration triumphs. The United States is engaged in what NASA Administrator Bill Nelson has called a space race, a term reminiscent of the Cold War rhetoric used to describe the competition between the United States and Russia. Nelson has warned that China's ostensibly civilian space program may be a cover for a military program. According to Nelson, China has the potential to own the resource-rich portions of the moon, and the United States is in a space race with them. China's space program has launched numerous lunar orbiting and sample retrieving missions, and in 2022, it also established a space station orbiting Earth. In response, the US has been planning to put astronauts back on the moon by 2026 with its Artemis 3 mission. China, meanwhile, aims to send humans to the moon by 2030. Nelson believes the United States will maintain its global edge in space exploration, but he cautions that we must be realistic. China has invested heavily in its space program, and there is a lot at stake. As we stand on the brink of a new era in space exploration, the discoveries made on the moon's far side by China's Chang'e 6 mission remind us of the endless mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Whether these findings will confirm the presence of extraterrestrial life or reveal new insights into our own planet's history, one thing is certain: humanity's exploration of space is far from over, and the moon's dark side may hold the key to some of the universe's most profound secrets. Here is the text rewritten as a paragraph. Space in their budget for future expansion, according to him, would be wise for us to remain vigilant. The moon is a major source of concern because, as Nelson has stated, China may cut off the United States if they reach the moon first to fulfill their plans to establish lunar outposts. The United States and China will require access to water and other resources, and while the international consensus is that no one can claim territory or resources on the moon, that's never been tested in reality, which one public policy professor described as a wild, wild west. The space race myth may be gaining traction in the US, but international cooperation in space exploration is far from non-existent. The European Space Agency, for instance, participated in the Chang'e 6 moon mission. An ESA technical officer told the BBC Global News podcast that it was a peaceful mission with a purely scientific goal. "It's a journey that we're trying to go on together rather than a race," he said, and it's positive that the achievements of one agency or one nation inspire the greater efforts of another. The United States and China both want to build human settlements on the moon, and Chang'e 6 moves China one step closer to that goal. While moon bases open new opportunities for science, a human lunar presence may have unintended repercussions, particularly on the far side, which has near-perfect conditions for radio astronomy. The cosmic dark ages, the period before the existence of stars and galaxies, might be observed by radio astronomers by collecting data from black holes. The cosmic dark ages were a time in the early cosmos when neutral hydrogen gas thickly obscured the sun and other light sources. The early universe was veiled in hydrogen, which absorbed the light given out by the first stars and radiation sources. But today, light can move in any direction in the cosmos, making it see-through. Everything in the universe was a dense, incredibly hot ball of ionized plasma for the first 38,000 years following the Big Bang. Subatomic particles in this high-energy soup were unable to acquire the electrons necessary to create stable atoms due to collisions between them. But when the cosmos cooled and expanded enough, subatomic particles could gain electrons to create neutral hydrogen atoms, and the cosmic dark ages started. However, when stars were born, their ultraviolet light ionized all the hydrogen in interstellar space, freeing photons to flow in any direction in the universe, unimpeded by neutral hydrogen. The cosmic dark ages started around 380,000 years after. The Big Bang, according to astrophysicist estimations based on observations and models. The processes that are thought to have brought the cosmic dark ages to an end started roughly 680 million years after the Big Bang and ended approximately 1.1 billion years after the Big Bang. The precise end of the cosmic dark ages is still up for discussion, while it is commonly acknowledged that they started 380,000 years after the Big Bang when the first neutral hydrogen atoms were produced. As more and more stars formed in the early universe, the process of reionization, during which the universe's largest stars released ultraviolet light into space, probably took several million years. According to observations of early galaxies, ionization started about 680 million years after the Big Bang, and the observable universe was probably fully ionized about 1.1 billion years after the Big Bang. Over time, the cosmic dark ages came to a close. Massive stars, the initial stars in the cosmos, were formed when denser areas of neutral hydrogen gas gravitationally compressed. Stars like this radiated vast quantities of UV radiation into the local cosmos, but it wasn't until the early universe was teeming with stars and protogalaxies that the neutral hydrogen in interstellar space was entirely reionized. The appearance of hydrogen in the cosmos signaled the beginning of the cosmic dark ages. The Big Bang was hot, and atoms consisting of hydrogen and a small amount of helium could be formed when the expanding universe allowed the dense plasma of protons, electrons, and other subatomic particles to cool sufficiently to condense. Although the galactic abundance of hydrogen eventually seeded the first stars and galaxies, this primordial hydrogen's absorption of different frequencies of light on the electromagnetic spectrum left the adolescent universe opaque. On the other hand, neutral hydrogen atoms lost their electrons when the initial stars and galaxies' fusion furnaces released enough high-energy ultraviolet radiation photons into interstellar space. These high-energy photons could now freely traverse the cosmos, unimpeded by the hydrogen atoms that were absorbing them. It was within the first half-billion years of the universe's existence that astronomers believe stars and galaxies began to form. These early stellar populations were responsible for distributing the first heavy elements across the cosmos and for triggering the reionization process that allowed light to travel unimpeded across space. The near-infrared camera on the James Webb Space Telescope has provided astronomers with unprecedented access to observe these structures in the early universe, and it has turned up a few surprises. Research into these young galaxies has revealed that they are far brighter than what was anticipated by theories of galaxy formation. Extremely massive, scorching stars may have been the inhabitants of these early galaxies. There are a few apparent obstacles that prevent us from studying the cosmos during its cosmic dark ages. 1. The massive clouds of hydrogen from that era blocked any light sources, and it was dark. But cosmologists and astronomers are hopeful that we may be able to see radio waves given off by hydrogen gas, which could provide illumination from this early cosmos era. Because Earth's atmosphere absorbs radio waves of this magnitude, they can only be seen from orbit. But one day, an observatory on the Moon will be able to see into the past when the cosmos appeared very different. A radio observatory on the Moon has the potential to provide astronomers with a fascinating window into the cosmic dark ages, as they have demonstrated. At the same time, one astronomer is sounding the alarm that the haste to construct lunar facilities would compromise the Moon's ideal study settings. A number of lunar landing attempts have already occurred in the 2020s, with some of them crashing or toppling over. Scientists and businesses alike stand to benefit from the renewed interest in sending people back to the Moon. The Moon's lack of a magnetic field and the relative absence of satellite interference make it an ideal site for telescopes that would be impractical or impossible to construct on Earth. However, astronomers have only lately begun to consider the possible tensions that may arise from the competing aims of advancing our understanding of the cosmos and settling geopolitical disputes in economic gain. By 2035, just 10 or so years away, American and Chinese rockets could be carrying humans to long-term lunar bases. Since this area receives almost constant solar power, scientists think there may be a rich water source in the Moon's darkest parts nearby. Both bases are planned for the same small areas near the South Pole. Unlike the Earth, the Moon is not tilted relative to its path around the Sun. As a result, the Sun circles the horizon near the poles, almost never setting on some crater rims. There, the never-setting Sun casts long shadows over nearby craters, hiding their flaws from direct sunlight for the past 4 billion years, 90% of the age of the solar system. These craters are essentially bottomless abysses of unending night, and it's not just dark down there, it's also cold, below -418 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists believe that the water present in these craters, which was most likely caused by ancient asteroids impacting the moon's surface, will remain solid for an extremely long period due to the extremely low temperature. These craters, which are referred to as permanently shadowed zones, may contain 500 million tons of water according to surveys conducted from lunar orbit. Moon bases could be located at the poles because of the abundance of solar power and the closeness to frozen water. Water is essential for drinking, washing, and growing crops on the bases so that astronauts can feed themselves. A local watering hole is significant since importing water supplies from Earth is too expensive due to the obvious practical constraints. Astronomers have long disregarded the moon as a possible location for telescopes, but human bases open up new opportunities. Recording extremely low-frequency radio waves is possible on the radio-sheltered far side of the moon, which is invisible from Earth. It is quite probable that these signals hold remnants of the dark ages of the universe when galaxies and stars did not yet exist. Given the extreme sensitivity of gravity wave detectors and the lack of seismic activity in the moon's polar regions, astronomers are considering positioning these instruments near the moon's poles. In the moments leading up to a black hole merger, researchers may be able to gather data from two black hole pairs using a gravitational wave detector on the moon. Predicting where and when they will merge tells astronomers where and when to look for a flash of light that they would otherwise miss. With those extra clues, scientists could learn how these black holes are born and how they evolve. As a result of the frigid temperature in the lunar poles, infrared telescopes are able to detect longer wavelengths of black body radiation, making them far more sensitive. Astronomers may have access to new resources with these telescopes as they search for Earth-like planets outside of our solar system that may support life. And more ideas keep coming. The first radio antennae are scheduled to land on the far side next year. However, the haste to construct moon colonies may compromise the lunar conditions that attract researchers. Even though the moon has a larger surface area than Africa, astronomers and explorers from Earth still prefer to focus on a small number of spots just a few miles across. But activities that will help sustain a human presence on the moon, such as mining for water, will create vibrations that could ruin a gravitational wave telescope. Additionally, Earth has a high demand for several of the moon's elements. Hydrogen and oxygen in liquid form are valuable rocket fuel, while helium-3 is an extremely rare element that is utilized to enhance quantum computers. But one of the few places rich in helium-3 on the moon is found in one of the most likely places to put a far-side dark ages radio telescope. Lastly, in the not-too-distant future, the moon will be home to two constellations of Internet and GPS satellites. A telescope from the dark ages would be rendered worthless by the unintended radio transmissions from these satellites. However, compromise isn't out of the question. There might be a few alternative spots to place each telescope. This year, the International Astronomical Union put together the working group Astronomy from the Moon to start defining which sites astronomers want to preserve for their work. These steps may help astronomers, astronauts from multiple countries, and private interests share the moon. Thanks for watching another episode of Voyager. While you're still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more mind-blowing videos about space.